Mostly just a welcome. I want to, basically express my gratitude for the folks who have been with us for some of the previous days, and welcome to those of you who are just joining us today, and also joining us through the recording. We know that folks can't all be here synchronously, so we're trying out, as many ways as we can to include folks asynchronously as well. So yeah, if you haven't joined us, just a quick recap. We had a really interesting day on the first day on Tuesday with looking at how we keep IIIF current. So a lot of good conversation there, and partly about some provocative questions about what IIIF should look like and the things it should address in the next 4 or 10 years, things like that. So there's some great notes. We'll actually be distributing all of the notes for all the different days to the attendees and to the broader IIIF community as soon as it's all wrapped up. And then yesterday, some really interesting conversation around demonstrating value with IIIF. So some really interesting conversation about tooling and the best ways to present the capabilities. And one big thing that we talked about is just that how many different things IIIF can solve and can do, and how the information about that isn't evenly distributed. So Sarah Brumfield, the facilitator, one of the facilitators for yesterday, kind of gave that William Gibson quote about how the future is here. It's just not evenly distributed. And that really does describe a lot of the ways that different people interact and intersect with IIIF. So some really good conversation about how we can smooth that out, how we can create guides and tools to connect people to the right functionality and the right cookbooks and things like that. And then that's all sort of leading, all the conversations between the technology and the community are all connected and interrelated. And then I think that really leads to the conversation that we're having today, which is very much outreach focused and geared toward just literally like, how do we reach the right people? How do we reach new folks in new areas and new parts of the world and new domains, different sectors that can benefit from IIIF, but maybe aren't yet as deeply aware of kind of the benefit that IIIF affords. So that's really the prompting need and question for today. So I'm going to hand it over to the chairs of the IIIF outreach group, and I'll let them introduce themselves, and then the sort of conversation that tees up the discussion piece of this day later on today. But I'll just say to conclude, thanks all for joining. Really grateful to have your attention and energy in this really important conversation. I think Claire, is it over to you first?
Yes, it is. Thank you, Josh, so much for introducing us. I just want to check before I get started, Meg, should I be sharing slides or will you do that?
Yeah. You're a co-host, so you can share.
Okay, thank you. Sorry. I am just going to bring this up, and this is where you'll see. Can you see that?
Yep.
It is still loading for me. Oh, now I can see it. Thank you very much. So yes, thank you all for joining us today in this outreach group session. And I'm going to start off, and then we're very fortunate that we've got a number of speakers who are going to talk to you about the outreach work they're doing. And then we're going to have a quick survey, and then you can have a coffee, tea, drink break. And then we'll come back and have some discussion in the second part. So that's the plan for this afternoon, morning, evening, wherever you are in your different time zones. So a bit of an introduction to the outreach groups. So there are 5 outreach co-chairs, myself and Rachel, who have been 2 of the co-chairs since the beginning in 2018. And unfortunately, Rachel sends her apologies today. And then we've recently been joined by 3 other co-chairs. So a huge thanks to Katerina, Emily and Lourdes, who joined us on the outreach group, and their first task was helping us arrange this session today. So a huge thank you to them for joining us today in this. Unfortunately, Lourdes has had to send her apologies as well, but Emily, Katerina and I will be your hosts for this afternoon. So what does the outreach group do? So this is our charter that was agreed at the outreach group and was gone through, and also that was updated relatively recently So we support the IIIF ambassadors, and you'll be hearing from one of those later on. We work with Meg, Glenn and Josh on the IIIF website, and it's great to see the new website launched. That's been a huge amount of work, so it's really good to see that coming through. We work on marketing materials. Obviously, that's changed over the time since we started in 2018, and you'll all know how much we love the IIIF t-shirts and the badges and the pins when we can meet in person. And unfortunately, that hasn't been able to be the case since early 2020. But that's one of the things that we've done as well. And working on training, and obviously that's changed as well. And it's great to see the training that Glenn's been leading and those 5-day events that people have been able to sign up for. Local events, so this is very much what happened when we started, and we hope we will be seeing more local events come as we begin to able to travel again, but they can happen online. So supporting organisers of local events, supporting them with outreach, people who can come and speak, what's happened, agendas, etc., when organising those local events and showcases, and outreach events in general. Coordinating presence at conferences and meetings. So that's very much if people want to go to conferences or they want to do speak at like more commercial events, you know, these big trade fairs, supporting that type of work happening as well, and pulling things together, and also liaising sometimes between people if they want to go and talk but would like somebody to speak to. And then identifying areas for IIIF adoption, be it commercial, collaborations, projects, etc. And we'll come to a bit more of that at the end. That's going to be our focus for today, looking at areas for IIIF adoption and areas we want to reach out into. So we meet on the last Tuesday of the month at 11 AM Eastern time, and our events are always on the calendar. We put them out on IIIF Discuss and on the Slack channels as well. We have the outreach Slack channel where people can reach us or just talk in general about outreach activities. And that's our page on the IIIF website. So what have we done and what have we been doing? So as I said, work on local events and getting them up and running. Translations, this was very much a piece of work that happened at the beginning. And huge thanks to Julian, who led a lot of the translation work and did a lot of work on that. And it's something that we're picking up again at the moment. And Katerina's going to talk a bit more about IIIF translations. We've done work on IIIF Awesome, though more of that's sort of been picked up by the IIIF staff more recently, but that's one of the things we've looked at. Initiatives, so when people come from ideas about how to reach out in IIIF, things that can happen. They don't always stay with the outreach group. So quite often people come to the outreach group with ideas and we will help them with those, and then they go off and have a life of their own. So yeah, huge thanks to Dawn, who was, excuse me, I've got a bit of a cold, who was one of our co-chairs, who's was on the outreach group for a while, and she's had lots of thoughts and initiatives with doing IIIF and the carpentries, and she's now gone and taken that elsewhere. Newsletters, so this is something that we were involved with very much at the beginning, but that has now fallen with Meg, that she's doing the monthly newsletters, so we're not as involved with that at the moment as well. So there are some things that have started and moved elsewhere, and we've been involved in the setting up and support of the Ambassadors Programme. So what we're going to do next, well, that's what we're here today. We really want to hear your ideas of what you think we should be working on, things that you think you would like to be involved in and help us take forward. And that's what we'd like to concentrate on as we go further. So where are we and where can we begin to? So this is where I'm going to hand over to Regis, who's going to talk to us about outreach in France.
Yes, thanks, Claire. And hello, everybody. I'm Regis, the technical coordinator of the Biblissima project in Paris, and working with IIIF for quite a long time now, and also member of the IIIF Technical Review Committee. Today, I'm going to talk a little bit quickly about the IIIF outreach effort in France, which partly derives from the work I've been doing within the framework of Biblissima in the past years, But now the context of this outreach activity is mainly that of the IIIF 360 initiative. So what is IIIF 360? It is an expertise service around IIIF standards that has been launched in November 2018, following the first French-speaking IIIF event in March 2018, organized by Biblissima. This service offers consulting, storage, and hosting services, mainly aimed at digital projects conducted by universities, research institutions, or in the cultural heritage sector. And it is cooperated by 3 French operators, Biblissima, which is a digital infrastructure on ancient written cultures, the Condorcet campus, which is a big humanities and social sciences research campus, gathering 11 universities and research centers in Paris, and Humanum, a large research infrastructure which provides services and tools for digital research data in social sciences and humanities in France. And so far, this service, this initiative has been providing technical support and advice to about 35 projects involving IIIF in libraries, archives, and digital humanities project in France. So next slide, please. And what action have we undertaken to support IIIF outreach in France? So first, we organized local IIIF events. So as I said before, the IIIF Day in 2018 in the world as it was before, and which was a great success. And then online conferences like the IIIF 360 Rendezvous in 2021, which raised a lot of interest as well. And also the France regional meeting as part of the 2021 IIIF conference last June. I also had the occasion to present IIIF in various institutions throughout France in many conferences, seminars, etc., at the invitation of DH Project, of libraries, archive, and so on. And I have counted about 15 presentations since mid-2018, which were mainly introductions to IIIF, ranging from 20 minutes to 2 hours. And for instance, recently I introduced IIIF at the annual seminar of the Archives of France, which was a perfect opportunity to reach out directors and managers of archive centers from all over the country. Next slide, please. So this is quite a one-off action, but I can still mention the few hours of courses I give as part of a master's degree in digital humanities at the University of Tours. And more importantly, I've also been in contact with 2 private companies working for the GLAM sector, especially for introductory and technical workshops online. Next slide, please. And this kind of workshops happened only twice, if I recall correctly, but it will certainly happen again in the future, and particularly in the framework of Biblissima Plus, which is about to start. And actually, this program is what will allow to continue and sustain the IIIF 360 initiative and the kind of actions I was mentioning before. So thanks to substantial funding, the overall Biblissima project will continue for another 8 years under the name Biblissima Plus. And it turns out that there will be a significant effort and resources devoted to push IIIF forward, especially toward the archive sector, which has seen very little adoptions in France so far. So this is really crucial to reach out to them and primarily reach out the software vendors the archive centers are working with currently. And so concretely, there will be 72 person months, so 6 years of full-time employment, fully dedicated to this particular task of implementing IIIF in archives in France in the next few years. So this is not really outreach as such, but I can still mention that there will be also annual calls for projects for 5 years. And in the regulations of these calls, there is a strong incentive towards new digitization projects to implement IIIF right from the start, of course. And last but not least, Biblissima Plus will also provide substantial support for the developments of tools for research with IIIF capabilities like eScriptorium and ArcIndex. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Regis, and congratulations on the funding for Bellissima Plus. That's great news.
Thanks.
And I'm going to move on next to Katerina. And if you do have questions, please put them in chat and we'll see how we're doing for time at the end. But please, speakers, if there's anything you can pick up in chat, please do so.
Hello, my name is Caterina Agostini. I'm the Digital Humanities Project Manager at the Center for Digital Humanities at Princeton University and co-chair of the IIIF Outreach Community Group. I'm a scholar of already modern science in Italy, writing on Galileo Galilei in particular, and I work with digital and cultural heritage. This presentation will discuss some activities of the IIIF Outreach Group with a language case study, the Italian IIIF. Next, please. Collecting information on translated and original materials in non-English languages is one of the main goals of the IIIF Outreach Community Group. Surveys of current materials allow us to circulate lists on non-English materials and promote the technology and contents of IIIF. Additionally, translations are also initiated in underrepresented languages, with translators and reviewers contributing to creating new materials. The total number of Italian speakers is approximately 85 million. Italian is an official language in Italy, Switzerland, San Marino, and Vatican City, the state of the Holy See. Italian is the second most widely spoken native language in the European Union, with 67 million speakers, approximately 15% of the EU population, and it is spoken as a second language by over 30 million EU citizens, approximately 3% of the EU population. Italian is also spoken in Croatia and Slovenia, and it is a second language for communities of heritage speakers and expatriate speakers in the Americas and Australia. Italian is a Romance language deriving mostly from Latin in the Indo-European language family. And I'll show you next what Italian materials deal with mostly. If we may move next, Claire, please. Italian materials mostly verge on the concept of cultura digitale. Why are translations relevant case studies to examine outreach and promote more engagement with IIIF content and technologies? I find that Italian is an interesting example for a IIIF outreach, translations, and circulation for several reasons. First, I am an Italian native speaker, and I have a closer connection to both mainstream English contents through digital humanities scholarship and practice, and to the contents translated into Italian. Second, Italian was adopted as an official language after the unification of Italy in the 1870s, while earlier several spoken varieties were equally popular, so that Italian was based largely on textual and literary versions from the 1300s to the 1500s, deriving from written Tuscan and Florentine varieties in particular. Additionally, cultura digitale, that is digital culture, is a leading key phrase for IIIF-related contents and instruction in Italian. We can find those materials in the GLAM industries for galleries, libraries, archives, and museums. as well as in cultural heritage companies, tech and software companies, and in public and private libraries. In terms of pedagogy, digital humanities courses and workshops present IIIF computational tools and case studies to higher education audiences, mostly at the graduate and professional level in Italy. One possible hindrance I see to clarity is the name, as in Italian IIIF is spelled out according to Italian conventions for acronyms, so that the single letters are spelled out, which sounds something like IIIF, and occasionally the English pronunciation is included too as IIIF. However, the acronym is not always explained as the International Image Interoperability Framework, and the original phrase is not translated either. Thankfully, the Italian National Unification Association has stepped in and taken up some of that work. This Italian National Unification Institution is a private nonprofit association that regulates standards for industry, trading, and services in Italy. Recently, their technical committee produced technical documents of documentation and information, and they included the adoption of IIIF in that context. Thus, promoting national expertise and tradition is a priority within that frame of standardization. Consequently, the National Media Library Online promoted IIIF technologies for some of their texts, and it is ongoing work there. Furthermore, this year, 2021, marks 700 years after the death of Dante Alighieri, the poet, and the illuminated Dante projects at Naples University shares images from 14th century and 15th century copies of the Divine Comedy by Dante. I will go to the next slide to show you one example of an institution that is highly committed to IIIF. And surprisingly, Italian is the official language of the Vatican, serving as the lingua franca, the main working language, whereas Latin is the official language in the Holy See. The Vatican Library, Biblioteca Apostolica Vaticana, was founded in the 15th century, and it holds manuscripts and archival collections, printed books, coins, medals, and art objects. In the library, there is a digital preservation department, and additional projects are implemented currently, including a IIIF unit resulting from a recent 3-year project working with Stanford University libraries, thanks to funding from the Andrew Mellon Foundation. The Vatican Library holds approximately 80,000 manuscripts, and 18,000 of them have been digitized and published online using IIIF. In addition to the technical implementations of IIIF there, the project also promoted IIIF as a convenient technology for manuscripts, and one which would benefit greatly from the annotation level as an important scholarly innovation to study book contents in terms of transcriptions and scholarly comments, with the comparative analysis of text and images across books. The collections at Biblioteca Apostolica Vaticana showcase IIIF standards, and they have varying levels of access to that type of technical information through a general description first in English and Italian, followed by a descriptive and structural metadata and scholarly narrative presented for each manuscript, concluding with annotations, comments, and in-depth analysis with transcriptions provided for specific details in the manuscript. To sum up, I'll go to next slide where I will share some of my views on speaking and writing about IIIF in Italian. I find that through a survey of current existing translations in Italian, I have been exposed to several perspectives from various industry and education contexts, including those of translators, reviewers, and native speakers who are IIIF users. From this case study, we learned that creating a framework to support IIIF translations of key collateral is a conceptual as well as a factual practice. I look forward to your feedback as you contribute to the work of the IIIF Outreach Community Group, and thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Caterina, for your presentation. And next, I'm going to move on to Anne, who's going to talk about the practical applications of IIIF as a building block towards a national collection.
If that's not a long title, I don't know what is. So first and foremost, I'll just pop a few links into the chat there for you to check out while I'm speaking or afterwards. And I suppose to start off, thank you to Claire and to the rest of the Outreach Committee co-chairs for inviting me to speak here today. Basically, I'm not talking about what's happening in all of the UK. I only have 5 minutes, and that's just a bit too much. However, I thought it might be useful to look at what we are doing. We're a very small project called Practical IIIF, based at the National Gallery, and sort of how we've approached outreach from a very sort of microcosmic level. So Meg, I apologize in advance, but I'm going to be saying slides an awful lot in this presentation. But if we could move to the next slide, please. All right, so we're part of this Towards a National Collection initiative. This was a larger 18.9 million AHRC funded 5-year initiative, though our grant is only for an initial first year. We're one of 8 what are called foundation projects, which are meant to be short scoping projects to sort of think about ways in which a national collection might be developed within the UK. The keyword is towards. We're not actually developing such a thing at this point. I wish we were, but alas, not. Instead, our project focuses on how IIIF might be used to unite items and research from multiple different collections and make it a bit more accessible. All right, to the next slide, please. We've got a few project partners who are helping us out with this. Everything from botanic gardens to corporate partners like Digerati, the IIIF Consortium, as well as libraries, archives, and museums. The idea being to sort of develop a wide range of views and hopefully start kind of liaising a bit more in depth with other cultural partners who are not typically involved in IIIF. I know many of us enjoyed Roger Hyam's presentation yesterday about the Royal Botanic Gardens and GBIV. So that's something we're engaging with as well. Next slide, please, Meg. As our project aims laid out, the next kind of first point is outreach, talking to people about the opportunities and benefits that the IIIF standard. So next slide, please. It's that one right there. So basically, it's fundamental to what we're trying to do with the project is really start to talk to people about IIIF and how it can help. Next slide, please. So the first way we're doing this is with some webinars. We've hosted 4 thus far. 2 that are larger, 2.5 hours, and 2 smaller ones about image registration and persistent identifiers, both of which were themes that sort of came out of discussions that happened in the first 2 larger webinars. They've proved fairly popular. Meg, if we could move on to the next slide, please. This is just a map of where our participants are coming from. That's 482 distinct locations across the world, predominantly in North America and Europe, though there is a bit of a spread there. And we welcomed just under 1,000 participants to our webinars thus far. Hoping to have 2 further ones sort of in the coming year. So definitely keep an eye out for those. We'll be announcing them on our Twitter feed. Next slide, please, Meg. But should you not happen to be able to make any of those, or if you would just like to watch them in your own time, one of the things that's very important to us as a project is making sure that our project outputs are persistent and are able to be accessed even after the project concludes. So we put the slides, the chat files, transcripts, and also video files of each of the sessions up on Zenodo. Zenodo is a data repository backed by CERN, who are more used to smashing particles into one another at high speeds in a particle accelerator. But they've opened up their repository to allow for the persistence of digital cultural heritage or other data sets that you may want to keep. It gives it a nice DOI, and it's guaranteed for the next 25 years. So hopefully that's long enough. I'm sure we'll be somewhere very different in 25 years' time. Next slide, please. You may notice we were missing one of those webinars that will be uploaded into Zenodo quite frequently. But I wanted to talk about this one for a different reason, and namely we ran a poll to the just under 100 people who were present for this webinar asking them a few questions. If we could move on to the next slide, please. First thing, what type of collections do you work with? So we can see that the vast majority of ours are coming from the library or gallery or archive backgrounds, with a fair bit of other and quite a few non-collection based. So that's going to be researchers, intellectuals, people who are working with collections but don't necessarily have them of their own. And finally, where are you from? A confusingly worded question, as we put both North America and the United States as potential answers. Whoops, that's a bit of a methodological fail there. But we can see that it's about equally split between Europe and the Americas. And our next slide. And we asked a few people other questions as well. For instance, do you know more about IIIF? Do you know more about persistent identifiers? We found that lots of people know bits about IIIF. Lots of them believe that their organizations use IIIF, but a fair few didn't know. And then our last question was about persistent identifiers, seeing as that was the theme of the webinar. We can move on to the next slide. So how are we reaching people in general? Webinars can bring in a few, but nowhere near as many as Twitter can reach, with sort of demonstrations and outreach. And we're using this in a few different ways. Next slide, please. The first way we're using it is to present our events, to advertise for registrations, and to publicize them. This tends to be where we're drawing the most sort of participants, as we can see from our Eventbrite stats. Next slide, please. As a way of trying to get people interested in IIIF, especially its deep Zoom capabilities, we run a weekly series called A Detail of the Week, where we take some really high-res Zooms from various institutions, both our partner institutions as well as others across the UK, and then use that to drive traffic to the website, looking at what that object actually is. And our next slide, please. And we've recently crested the 500 follower mark on Twitter, so we decided to celebrate a little bit with extended articles about sort of connected collections. So these are from each of our partner institutions, taking a curator-nominated specimen and talking about it in a little more depth, as a way of showing the way that IIIF could be used by researchers or independent scholars to present and publicize their research. Next slide, please. And all of this drives to our website. The website itself is built on a platform called SimpleSite, which Joe Padfield developed as part of his work for the National Gallery and various projects, this one being one of them. It's a GitHub hosted pages site. It does run off of JSON, but it is fairly easy to use and free to use, and embeds Mirador, Universal Viewer. You can do even sort of things like panel track, include videos, include other links out. That's some specimens and things from various collections in the UK. All right, and next slide, please. The website itself gets some fairly broad usage. This is basically the map. We run Google Analytics out of the back of the site. So we can see that we are reaching more than just the UK, though that is predominantly where we're finding our readership. I think part of that is to do with the language, part of it is to do with the time zone that we're in, and the other part just has to do with the fact that we are part of this Towards National Collection project. And finally, next slide, please. So we figured we'd talk a little bit about the numbers here. So we are a small project. I've been employed only since April, though the project started a few months before, but we had a delay due to COVID. And in the time the project is running, we've had about 175,000 impressions on Twitter and 558, though I'm told that just went up to 9 followers. Our webinars have reached just under 1,000 people from all across the globe, with the website getting about 1.5 thousand active visitors. And our Zenodo materials have been viewed 776 times, which doesn't sound like a lot, but then downloaded a further 453, showing that these are actually references that people are making use of. So that's just a small snapshot of sort of where we're at from a small project perspective and what you can really do using basic free tools, things like SimpleSite, Twitter, and webinars, to sort of start driving people and various institutions towards employing IIIF, either in the back end or hopefully in the front end. All right, so I think we'll conclude there. I'm happy to take your questions, of course, once we get there. And I'll hand it back to Claire.
Thank you very much. Those are really impressive numbers for the work that's been happening during this pandemic time as well.
Tiny project. So.
Thank you very much. And then I'm going to move on to our final speaker, Andrea. I hope I've said your name correctly.
Yes, Andrea, thank you. Can I share my screen? Not to bothering you. Yeah.
Yes, I can stop sharing, and I think Meg can.
Yes, I'm co-host.
Okay, I will stop sharing and you can share yours.
Thank you. Good evening. Let's first share it where it is. Here. I think it's. Can you see it? Everything is okay?
Yes, we can. It's not full. It's not full screen.
Now it is.
Yes, now it is.
Thank you. Good morning, good evening, and good day, good afternoon. I'm Anja Sagic, I'm IIIF ambassador. Also, I'm a information coordinator at IFLA section, audiovisual and multimedia, and co-chair of IFLA of IIIF audio video community group. So my team is convincing international IFLA to IIIF. Well, what is the main idea? Main idea to use my both functions to get closer both communities. So we had 10 days ago our first joint meeting. It was very successful. I can say the reaction from IFLA section was amazing, great. We want to implement IIIF, but how? So I think it's a good opportunity to join our power and to help IFLA members to implement the IIIF into their digital collection and spread it at more members. Now, I would like to introduce you with IFLA. What is IFLA? For those who don't know, I know most of you are, but IFLA is an international organization, federation of library associations and institutions. So the library associations and institutions around the world are gathered in this federation. So they cover literally whole world. There are a lot of people from Africa, from Oceania, and etc. And I think it's a good opportunity to help them to implement the IIIF standard, and to help them, to most of them, to help them to build their own digital collections. So audio and visual multimedia section is a part of professional divisions. It gather people from association all over the world with interesting in audiovisual and multimedia content. And regarding that, the type of content isn't well supported yet into IIIF. It is now regarding the third version of presentation API, but we still have a lot of work to do to implement the subtitle search, accepting subtitles to be seen and searched in the different viewers, IIIF viewers. Also, I think our cooperation can be productive to interest in the professionals from libraries around the world, to meet them and to introduce them the opportunity to to meet them with the possibility of use of IIIF standard in AV content. This kind of cooperation could be also, I think so, I believe that it could be, to find a good model of cooperation with such huge federation. If we define well our cooperation in the form of section and one community group that can build a model for further cooperation between other sections in IFLA and other community groups in IIIF. So we will put soon the IIIF. It's in our plan for next year to publish the IIIF standard in our website, in our repository, recommendations also. So, and to organize at least one webinar to introduce the members of IFLA community, IFLA section, and all the who was interested in that with IIIF possibilities in this specific kind of content. So I had one meeting a few days ago with my colleague from Berlin. She's a city library of Berlin. It's very interesting to implement IIIF in their national project of audio and video archive, and to connect the different sources into one platform. And I believe they will be successful. So it could also be a good opportunity to give a support for the IFLA community and the members of IFLA around the world, a good technical support. If they have some issues, they can meet us or Slack or either our community meetings or regular meetings, and to help them to implement it in more better way. So I hope this is the beginning of the next level of cooperation with the Federation, and I believe that we can spread it through the Federation in more official way, which will end at the beginning of December with one official document of our cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and thank you for the work that you've been doing with IFLA on behalf of the IIIF community.
I hope it will have results.
We hope so too. It looks great. Thank you. And now I'm going to hand over to my fellow co-chair, Emily.
Sounds great. Claire, do you want to share the slides again from your screen? That would be great if you wouldn't mind.
I will do that, yes.
Okay.
It helps if I press the right button. There, can you see that? Oh, I need.
Yeah, we just need to go back a few slides. Yeah.
Sorry. Sorry.
That's all good. Okay, great. So I'm Emily Gore. I'm at the University of Tennessee at Knoxville, and am a new co-chair on this project, but have worked with the IIIF community throughout the years. In particular, I'm really coming at this thinking about not only using IIIF in my own projects, but thinking about aggregation and bringing in smaller institutions, and how we pull together like statewide projects and things like that. So that's my point of view. But so you'll see some in the new opportunities area, some things that I'm particularly interested in, but hopefully I'm also going to hit a number of the things that as a community that we've identified that are areas of interest or areas where we think that we should be concentrating on expanding. And as we talk through some of these communities this afternoon, we're going to also talk about a roadmap of how we accomplish that. So I'll start off by talking about the opportunities for growth, the areas that we've identified. If you want to go to the next slide, Claire.
Yeah.
All right, great. So these are just a few of the areas that we've identified, I think, that could use some particular focus and an action plan associated with those areas. They include STEM, geographic-based locations, and showing your map of just the folks that you're reaching across the world. I think really it made me feel like, okay, this actually is possible. You know, you were reaching, even there were places in Africa, all the way out to New Zealand, Australia, you know, all throughout Europe. You know, it seemed to be a large Asia, other places. Just, you know, in your project, you were reaching that. So hopefully, you know, we are, you know, really beginning to at least there's knowledge in broad geographic areas. Museums is an area. I know there's a group concentrated on museums, but museums I think is an area we've identified for potential growth, for specific outreach. Smaller organizations that I mentioned in my intro myself, it's one of my particular interests, is how do we reach these smaller organizations that often can't do this themselves? How do we help those folks become IIIF users so that they can share their rich collections, even if they're small institutions? Individual researchers as well. I know that's something that Anne in particular has talked about as being challenging in her project, and I know that in a number of the trainings there have been individual researchers. So how do we target that community? The commercial sector, we've talked a little bit about vendors in here. How do we work with vendors? How do we think about, you know, getting IIIF integrated into vendor products? How do we, you know, target those communities and really move that conversation forward? Obviously working with organizations. We just heard about IFLA as a possibility. I'm sure there are many others, existing community or affinity groups that we could think about, that we could potentially target to work with, whether they're country specific or whether they're broad international scope like the IFLA. I think there are opportunities to work with affinity groups to make those kinds of connections. If you have other groups that you really think about, places that we could certainly concentrate or develop an outreach plan for reaching particular groups, we'd love to hear that. Archives, absolutely. If there are others, please put them in chat, because we're going to have an opportunity later this afternoon to really unpack these opportunities and talk more about strategies around reaching these communities. So next slide, Claire. So obviously, with all of these opportunities is going to come a set of challenges. So our goal is to involve more communities and then actually to determine an actionable roadmap to make that happen. I think that's the biggest challenge, right? Is we can identify communities all day long, but how do we actually go about reaching those communities? How do we develop an effective plan to do that? And we've identified just a few challenges, and some of those being technology roadblocks, copyright roadblocks. Obviously, copyright is, you know, always its own beast, and each country has its own set of rules. But I think, and one of the other things is just the sheer, in particular, thinking about geography and how we actually manage growth and outreach, and thinking about how to tackle that challenge and breaking that down. So those are some of the challenges that, immediately came to mind for us when thinking about how we approach these communities. I'm sure that there are many more that you all can think of. And I think as we begin to, Claire's going to give us a little poll, but afterwards we're going to take a break. And during that break time, I'd encourage you to think about some of these areas for growth and what are opportunities and challenges associated with those areas, and your ideas about how we overcome those challenges and how we develop a roadmap. So I'm going to turn it over to you, Claire.
Thank you, Emily. So now it is all your turn. So before we let you go for your tea and coffee and biscuits or whatever pastries you've got in your kitchen, please go to the Menti Meter, and that's at menti.com. And if you put in the code 34850043, then we want to know the 4 areas that you think we need to look at for growth. And these, any that you think of, you can fill it in more than once. But the top 4, we would really appreciate if you could fill that in. And then when we come back after 15 minutes, so we'll meet at 10 past the next hour. So we'll meet again at 10 past. But if you can fill this in before you go and have your comfort break, then this will produce a word cloud, and I'll share that in a sec. And then we will be looking at that. And our aim in the next section is to come up with actions that we can do to address these areas. So we really want to come up not just with a list, but a list of definite things that we can do that we will then take forward in 2022. So I'm just going to stop sharing for a minute. Can somebody grab that and put it in the chat? And then I will try and get the word cloud up. Somebody put the code and things in the chat?
Yep, it's there, Claire.
Thank you. I can't see the chat while sharing a screen. Oh. Thank you. And then I will just, oops. The problem is I live in Teams at the moment, so it's, and then I will share again. And so you should be able to see the word cloud forming as you put more things in. It should move around. So we will meet again at 10 past the hour.
We actually just on the schedule have a quick lunch or dinner or tea or breakfast, depending where everyone is, from 12 until 12:30 schedule.
Okay, so it's is it 12:30 we'll meet again then?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Sorry about that, everyone.
Has everyone had a chance to enter some suggestions in the Menti Meter? Maybe we should just give folks maybe one more minute. So we have about 1 minute left until we're supposed to break for a 30-minute lunch or dinner or breakfast or tea or stretching break or whatever you want to do. And then Claire, correct me if I'm wrong, but we'll come back and discuss the results and then split up into some groups to discuss some efforts that we can begin or continue in these areas.
I think we thought we'd go through them as a full group, but split up our time.
I see. That's right. Yeah.
So we'll pick the top sorts 3, 4 and work through those all together.
Okay, perfect. So no breakout rooms, just go through the different topics.
Yep.
We do have an
decided
hour
to
and a
keep
half,
it simple. So. Yeah.
Perfect. All right. So should we all meet back here at 12:30?
Yeah. So we'll see everyone in 30 minutes, and we'll go through the top things from the word cloud. Thank you all so much.
Right. Thanks. I'll see you in 30 minutes.